Well, hello again, children. I'm so glad that you're back in the North Pole with me. Now, tell me something. How are your wrapping skills? Are you the sort that ties ribbons so perfectly that people don't even want to open the present? Or are you the type that ends up with more tape stuck to your fingers than on the paper? Go on, be honest, I won't tell. But let me tell you, you're in good company if you struggle with wrapping. Even I, yes me, Father Christmas, have had my fair share of wrapping disasters. Oh, there was the year I tried to wrap a football. I thought it'd be simple, but by the time I finished it looked more like a confused snowball. And don't get me started on the time I tried to wrap a box of chocolates. Somehow I ended up wrapping myself into the gift instead. Mrs. Christmas had to come rescue me with a pair of scissors. I may have eaten one of two as well. Now, while I might not be the best at wrapping, that's why we have elves like Lenny. Lenny. He's the best gift wrapper we've ever had at the North Pole. His fingers move so quickly and so precisely, you'd think they were enchanted. He can tie a bow blindfolded and fold corners sharper than an icicle on a frosty morning. And the best part? Lenny's got a heart as big as his talent. He loves teaching new elves the art of wrapping and always has the patience to show them every little trick. Now, yesterday, Lenny decided it was time to run a wrapping practice session for some of the newer elves. Oh, and what a session it was. The goal was simple. Help the elves master wrapping even the trickiest gifts. Now, when I say tricky, I mean tricky. We're talking about wrapping stars, rocking horses, and even a stuffed octopus. But with Lenny in charge, we were all confident it would go smoothly. But there's a thing that you're learning about the North Pole and about enchanted paper. It has a mind of its own. One moment it's cooperating beautifully, and the next it's slipping and sliding all over the place. So let me tell you what happened when the magical wrapping paper decided to make things, let's say, a bit more interesting. So, let me tell you about the wrapping station. It's one of the most magical places in the North Pole. And that's saying something. Imagine a room the size of a skating rink, with snow-dusted beams crisscrossing the ceiling and twinkling fairy lights draped everywhere like glittering icicles. Rows of long wooden tables stretch across the room, each equipped with a full set of wrapping tools. Enchanted scissors that cut in perfectly straight lines, rolls of shimmering paper in every colour imaginable, and ribbons that curl themselves into spirals at a touch. Along the walls, shelves groan under the weight of tags, bows and boxes. The air smells faintly of peppermint and cinnamon, and the occasional puff of glitter swirling through the air as if the elves finished their masterpiece. Yesterday, this bustling space was even busier than usual. Why, you ask? Because Lenny, the North Pole's master gift wrapper, had decided to host a wrapping practice session. Now, if you don't already know Lenny, let me tell you a little bit about him. He's an elf unlike any other. He's bald with a shiny head that reflects the glow of the fairy lights above, and his strong arms come from years of cutting, folding, and tying ribbons with precision. But it's not just his skill that makes him special, it's his patience, kindness, and knack of teaching. Lenny loves nothing more than sharing his wrapping wisdom with newer elves, and yesterday was no exception. "All right, everyone," Lenny announced as the elves gathered around him. His voice was as steady and reassuring as the sound of reindeer bells in the distance. "Today we're going to tackle the tough ones. I'm talking stars, spheres, rocking horses, and for the truly brave, this." With a dramatic flourish, Lenny lifted a stuffed octopus onto the table. Its 8 floppy legs dangled in all directions, drawing a collection of gasps from the elves, followed by giggles. "Now don't worry," Lenny said, a playful glint in his eye. "By the time we're done, you'll be able to wrap anything, even this octopus, and make it look like it belongs in the finest toy shops in the world." The group of elves burst into applause, excited but nervous. Among them was Emberley, one of the youngest and most enthusiastic elves at the North Pole. With her fiery red hair tied back in a braid and her cheeks flushed with determination, she couldn't wait to prove herself. Emberley loved working with her hands, and although she usually spent her time crafting certificates with Ladham, she'd been eager to try her hand at gift wrapping. "Do you think I can wrap a snowflake gift today, Lenny?" Emberley asked, her green eyes sparkling with excitement. "I think you can wrap anything, Emberley," Lenny replied with a grin. Standing beside Emberley was Doily, one of the most senior elves. Doily usually worked behind the scenes in logistics, ensuring that everything ran smoothly in the North Pole's bustling operations. He wasn't known for his wrapping skills. In fact, he often joked that his presents looked more like crumpled snowballs than neatly wrapped gifts. But he decided to join the practice session for the fun of it. "I'll leave the fancy bows to you, Lenny," Doily said with a laugh as he struggled to cut a straight line on the wrapping paper, "but I promise I'll try my best." Doily might not be the most graceful with the scissors, but his heart was in the right place, and he has a way of making everyone around him feel at ease. Now, the real star of the wrapping station, of course, was the Enchanted wrapping paper. It's a special kind of paper that shimmers like sunlight on snow and has just the right amount of stickiness to hold itself together without tape. But like all enchanted things, it has a bit of a personality. If you treat it with care, it works beautifully, almost wrapping the gift for you. But if you're rough with it, or if it's feeling particularly cheeky, it can slip and slide and fold itself into odd shapes, or cling to your hands like a mischievous snowball. Yesterday, the paper was behaving perfectly. The elves worked diligently following Lenny's instructions as he demonstrated how to fold sharp edges and tie perfect ribbons. Emberley was making impressive progress, carefully wrapping a snowflake-shaped box with a silver ribbon. Even Doily was managing to get the hang of things, though his bows were a little bit wobbly. "Looking good, everyone," Lenny called out as he moved between the tables, offering tips and encouragement. "Remember, it's all about keeping the paper taut and the folds crisp, and don't forget to add a little flair with your ribbons." The room buzzed with energy as the elves tackled their practice gifts. Some were wrapping star-shaped toys, while others worked on spheres, rocking horses, and even a miniature sleigh. The sound of scissors snipping and paper rustling filled the air, accompanied by the occasional laugh as an elf proudly showed off their creation. But then, now my friends, Lenny's plan for the wrapping practice session was nothing short of brilliant. You see, teaching elves to wrap gifts isn't just about folds and ribbons. It's about instilling confidence, spreading a sense of pride in their work, and making the process magical. Lenny believed that wrapping wasn't just a skill, it was an art form. And yesterday, he had every intention of passing on that passion to the younger elves. The session had begun with a clear step-by-step approach. Lenny had gathered everyone around one of the wooden tables, his warm smile immediately putting the nervous elves at ease. The table was covered with an array of colourful wrapping paper, rolls of ribbon, and practice gifts for all shapes and sizes. Lenny had begun, with his deep voice carrying across the room. "The goal today is simple. We're going to master the basics, tackle the tricky shapes, and by the end of this session, you'll all be wrapping wizard. Does that sound good?" The group of elves had let out a cheer, their excitement filling the room. Lenny had begun the session with demonstrating the basics. He picked up a simple rectangular box and a sheet of enchanted wrapping paper, a special type of paper. "Now watch closely," Lenny said, his tone calm and steady. "The trick with rectangles is to keep your folds sharp and your paper snug. You want the edges to look crisp, like the corners of a perfectly stacked gingerbread house." His hands moved like magic. With a few quick folds and a tug of the ribbon, he transformed the plain box into a perfectly wrapped present, complete with a glittering bow. The elves clapped in admiration. "Looks easy, right?" Lenny said with a wink. "Well, it is, once you've had a bit of practice. Now it's your turn." The elves had set to work, grabbing boxes and sheets of paper. At first there were some missteps. Emberley accidentally folded her paper inside out, while Doily managed to stick a ribbon to his sleeve instead of the gift. But with Lenny moving between the tables, offering tips and encouragement, the group quickly found their rhythm. "Remember," Lenny said as he helped an elf smooth out a stubborn crease, "wrapping isn't about being perfect. It's about showing care. A little extra effort goes a long way." With the basics mastered, it was time to tackle the more challenging shapes. "All right," Lenny said, picking up a fresh sheet of paper. "Stars are tricky but not impossible. The key is to start with the largest point and work your way around. Watch closely." His hands moved with practiced ease, folding and tucking the paper until the star was perfectly wrapped. And don't forget to add a ribbon for that extra touch of magic. He added, tying a glittering silver bow around the center. "I think I can do that," Emberley said, her confidence growing. She grabbed a star-shaped box and a roll of paper, carefully mimicking Lenny's movements. Though her folds weren't as sharp, the end result was impressive for a first attempt. "Fantastic work, Emberley," Lenny said, clapping her on the shoulder. Meanwhile, Doily was battling a round gift, a practice ball meant to mimic the challenge of wrapping a sphere. "I think this ball has something against me," Doily muttered, struggling to keep the paper from slipping. "Let me show you a trick," Lenny said, stepping over to help. "For spheres, you want to gather the paper at the top like this, then twist it gently, kind of like wrapping a bonbon." With Lenny's guidance, Doily managed to secure the paper, though his bonbon had a few extra wrinkles. "It's not perfect," Doily said, "but it'll do." Finally, Lenny moved to the final challenge. That stuffed octopus with its 8 floppy legs. "Now, for those of you feeling brave," Lenny said, with a playful grin, "this little guy is your final challenge. Wrap him and you can officially call yourselves wrapping experts." Most of the elves nervously laughed, but Emberley stepped forward, her fiery determination shining through. "I'll give it a try," she said, picking up the octopus. "That's the spirit," Lenny said. Now Emberley carefully arranged the legs, wrapping each one individually before folding the paper neatly around the body. Though it took her twice as long as the other gifts, the end result was nothing short of magical. "I did it!" Emberley exclaimed, holding her wrapped octopus. The room erupted in applause, and even Doily managed to cheer through a mouthful of ribbon. But just as the elves were feeling confident, that enchanted paper that I mentioned decided it was time for a little mischievousness. So it had all been going well. The elves were progressing. They were enjoying themselves. Confidence was growing with each gift they wrapped. Emberley had just mastered the octopus and done a snowflake too. Doily was on his 3rd attempt at a star-shaped toy. Lenny moved through the stations, offering tips and encouragement, his warm presence keeping everyone at ease. The magical wrapping paper, which supposed to make the session easier, had been behaving perfectly all morning. It was sticking exactly where it should and folding as smooth as a fresh snowdrift. Yet, as everyone on the North Pole will tell you, when enchanted items decide to be mischievous, anything can happen. It began with a tiny flicker of movement. Emberley focused on cutting a ribbon, didn't notice the silver sheet of paper beside her start to lift at one corner. The paper fluttered gently at first, like it was testing the air. Then, without warning, it sprang to life, slithering off the table and like a mischievous snow snake. "Hey!" Emberley cried, dropping her ribbon and diving after the escaping paper. "Where do you think you're going?" Across the room, Doily had just managed to fold the last corner of his star-shaped gift. He stepped back to admire his work when, to his horror, the paper began folding itself in the wrong direction. It twisted and bent, reshaping the gift that could only be described as a sparkly snowflake sculpture. Lenny," Doily called, holding up the now unrecognizable gift. "Is this supposed to happen?" Lenny, who was helping other elves with a rocking horse, turned just in time to see a roll of golden wrapping paper on the shelf behind him unspool itself in one long shimmering cascade. The paper tumbled to the floor, pooling like a golden river before lifting gently in the air and floating around the room. "That's not ideal," Lenny muttered, his brow furrowing as he tried to think of a solution. But the enchanted paper wasn't done yet. Within moments, Chaos erupted in the wrapping station. Sheets of paper flitted through the air, their movements wild and unpredictable. One piece wrapped itself around a chair, tying a bow on the backrest. Another darted toward the ceiling, spinning in circles around the fairy lights. A particularly cheeky roll of red paper decided to wrap itself around a stuffed bear, leaving only its ears poking out. And then, my friends, the real pandemonium began. Emberley, still chasing the silver paper that had escaped her table, made a daring leap to grab it. But the slippery sheet darted away at the last second, sending her tumbling into a pile of ribbons. "Gotcha!" she shouted, snatching at the paper. But instead of catching it, she accidentally triggered its self-sticking enhancement, and before she knew it, the paper had wrapped itself around her arms like a shiny silver cocoon. "Lenny," she called, her voice muffled. "I think I need a little help here." Meanwhile, Doily was fighting his own battle. A rogue sheet of green wrapping paper had attached itself to his hat and was folding itself into a bow on top of his head. He waved his scissors wildly, trying to free himself. "This paper has it out for me," Doily cried, spinning in circles as the paper flapped behind him like a festive cape. Oh, poor Doily. He looked like a cross between a Christmas superhero and a very confused snowman. Lenny, seeing the chaos unfolding, tried to take charge. "Everyone stay calm," he called, clapping his hands to get their attention. "We can handle this." But even Lenny, with all his experience, was struggling to keep up. A roll of golden wrapping paper had unspooled itself and was zipping around the room like a comet, trailing glitter in its wake. Lenny lunged for it, his fingers brushing the edge of the paper, but it slipped away, wrapping itself round a nearby shelf instead. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't get any worse, the enchanted paper began working together. Yes, you heard me right, together. One sheet would flutter in front of an elf to distract them, while the other would sneak up behind and wrap itself round their legs. At one point, 3 different pieces of paper teamed up to create what looked like a miniature fort out of gift boxes. "It's alive!" Doily shouted, pointing dramatically at the swirling mass of paper and ribbons. "This is more than just enchanted," Emberley added, still struggling to free herself from the silver cocoon. Despite the chaos, there was something almost magical about the scene. The wrapping station was alive with colour and movement, the flying paper catching the light in dazzling displays of gold, silver and red. The elves, though flustered, couldn't help but laugh at the sheer absurdity of it all. Now Lenny, ever the calm leader, stood in the middle of the chaos, his hands on his hips as he surveyed the room. He could see the panic in some of the newer elves' faces, and he could also see the determination in their eyes. "All right, team. So here's the thing with the North Pole. When something goes wrong or mischief happens, we don't point fingers. We don't dwell on what went wrong. Instead, we pull together, each elf bringing their unique talents to the table. That's what makes this place so special. And yesterday, when the enchanted wrapping paper turned the station into a whirlwind of chaos, it was no different." Lenny, standing tall in the centre of the wrapping station, well, tall for an elf, quickly realised he couldn't fix the situation alone. The enchanted paper was everywhere, slipping under the tables, fluttering around the shelves, and wrapping anything it could reach. But if there was one thing Lenny knew how to do, it was rally his team. "Emberley, Doily," Lenny called, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the noise of rustling paper and elf chatter. "I need you over here now." Emberley, who was still half wrapped in a cocoon of silver paper, stumbled forward, her fiery red braids swinging behind her as she tried to free her arms. She clutched a roll of ribbon in one hand, her green eyes blazing with determination. "I'm here," she said, her voice muffled by the layers of paper around her. Doily followed close behind, scissors in hand, his green paper cape fluttering like the cloak of a Christmas superhero. Despite the glitter in his hair and the ribbon tangled round his boots, Doily was ready for action. "All right, Lenny," Doily said, puffing out his chest in mock bravado. "Tell me where to start." You should have seen them, children. Emberley, the youngest elf in the room, and Doily, one of the oldest, both ready to tackle the chaos with everything they had. And Lenny, ever the leader, wasted no time coming up with a plan. "Listen up," Lenny said, his voice steady as he addressed Emberley and Doily. "This enchanted paper has a mind of its own, but we're smarter. Emberley, you're quick and creative. I need you to grab every ribbon you can find and tie down any loose sheets of paper before they escape again. Emberley nodded, determination etched on her face. Got it, she said, already tugging at the silver paper wrapped round her arms to free herself. Doily, Lenny continued, turning to the older elf, your job is to use those enchanted scissors to cut through the paper. Your job is to use those enchanted scissors to cut the paper free from anything it's already wrapped. Chairs, shelves, stuffed toys, whatever it's got its hold on. I need you to set it loose. Doily adjusted his green cape and saluted with his scissors. Consider it done, he said with the grin that betrayed his nerves. And me, Lenny added, pointing to the shelves where the rolls of paper were still unspooling themselves, I'll handle the rolls. If we can stop them at source, we'll have a better chance of getting this under control. Emberley tilted her head thoughtfully, her quick mind already working on the details. The paper seems to react to movement, she said, watching as a sheet of gold paper flitted toward the ceiling. What if we use that to our advantage? We could distract it, make it think it's outsmarting us while we trap it. Lenny's eyes lit up. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need, he said with a nod. All right, team, let's do this. But Lenny wasn't done yet. He turned to the rest of the elves, who were still scattered around the stations, hiding under tables, and others tried in vain to grab the rogue sheets of paper. All right, everyone, Lenny called, clapping his hands to get their attention. This isn't just about us, it's about teamwork. We need all hands on deck. Emberley and Doily are leading the charge, but every one of you has a role to play. If you see a piece of paper heading for the shelves, block its path. If you catch a sheet, hold it steady until Emberley can tie it down. And whatever you do, don't panic. We've got this. The younger elves exchanged nervous glances, but quickly rallied, their confidence bolstered by Lenny's steady leadership. You heard him, Emberley said, her voice strong despite the ribbons tangled around her. Let's show this paper who's boss. And so, children, the wrapping station became a hive of activity. Emberley darted from table to table, her quick hands working like magic as she tied down rogue sheets of paper with ribbons. She moved with the speed and determination of a reindeer on Christmas Eve, her fiery hair a blur as she tackled the task ahead on. You're not getting away this time, Emberley declared, leaping onto a chair to grab a piece of silver paper that had floated toward the ceiling. She tied it down with a flourish, her grin growing wider with every victory. Meanwhile, Doily was battling a particularly stubborn sheet of green wrapping paper that had wrapped itself around a stuffed bear. With his enchanted scissors in hand, he carefully snipped away the folds, freeing the bear inch by inch. Hang tight, little guy, Doily muttered as he worked. I'll have you out of there in no time. Lenny perched on one of the long wooden tables, focused on the source of the chaos, the rolls of wrapping paper still unspooling on the shelves. His strong, nimble hands moved quickly, gathering the loose ends and folding them back into place. Gotcha, Lenny said, securing a roll of gold paper with a perfectly placed fold. Everywhere in the room, the other elves followed suit, blocking the paths of the rogue sheets, using their tools to pin the paper down and cheering each other on with every small victory. Bit by bit, the chaos began to subside, the enchanted paper losing its momentum as the team worked together to bring it under control. And you know what, my friends? It wasn't just Lenny, Emberley, or Doily who saved the day. It was every elf in the room. They proved that even when the things go wrong, even when the magic gets a little out of hand, there's nothing the North Pole team can't handle when they work together. With the chaos finally under control, the wrapping station began to settle. The elves tidied up the glitter and ribbons, their faces glowing with pride and relief. That was incredible, Emberley said, her cheeks flushed with the excitement. I've never seen anything like it. Neither have I, Doily added, adjusting his green cape with a grin. But I think we handled it pretty well, don't you? More than pretty well, Lenny said, his voice warm with pride. You two and everyone else did an amazing job. This wasn't just about fixing the mess, it was about teamwork, quick thinking, and staying calm under pressure. And you all proved you've got what it takes. The younger elves beamed at Lenny's praise, their confidence soaring. Even the most nervous among them stood with a little taller, their smiles a little brighter. And that my friends, is the magic of the North Pole. It's not just in the glitter and the ribbons or even the enchanted paper. It's in the way every elf comes together, each one bringing their unique gifts to the table. And yesterday, thanks to Lenny's leadership and the incredible teamwork of his friends, the wrapping station didn't just survive the chaos, it came out stronger than ever. And so, children, the wrapping station was saved, not by magic or luck, but by the hard work, creativity, and teamwork of some truly remarkable elves. When the last rogue piece of enchanted paper fluttered harmlessly to the floor, a great cheer had rose up in the wrapping station. Laughter echoed off the snow-dusted beams, and the elves gathered together, their faces glowing with pride. Emberley had stood near the shelves, still clutching her spool of ribbon. Glitter sparkled in her fiery red braid, and although she was out of breath, her green eyes shone with excitement. That was amazing, she said, turning to Lenny and Doily. I mean, I knew rapping could be fun, but I never thought it could be an adventure too. You handled it like a pro, Lenny said, giving her an approving nod. Quick thinking, steady hands, you've got all the makings of a rapping wizard. Doily adjusted his green cape, his grin wide with mischievous. And don't forget me, he said with a dramatic flourish of his scissors, the hero of the stuffed bear and the champion of the chair. Ah, Doily, he may have had glitter in his hair and ribbons tangled around his boots, but he stood as proud as any elf could. But of course, children, no North Pole adventure ends without a little celebration. After tidying up the stations, the elves gathered around one of the big long wooden tables, which had been transformed into a feast of festive treats. Plates of gingerbread cookies, bowls of sparkling snowberry punch, and trays of candy cane twists were laid out for everyone to enjoy. Lenny, Emberley, and Doily sat together, their laughter mingling with the hum of cheerful conversation. Emberley was halfway through a snowberry tart when she turned to Lenny with a thoughtful expression. Lenny, she said, how do you stay so calm when everything's going wrong? I mean, I was panicking when the paper started flying everywhere. Lenny smiled, his eyes crinkling with kindness. The trick, he said, is to remember that no problem is too big when you've got friends by your side. It's okay to feel nervous or overwhelmed, but you don't have to face it alone. That's what teamwork is for. Emberley nodded, her admiration for Lenny growing even stronger. And as the celebration wound down, Lenny lingered in the wrapping station, tidying up the last few rolls of paper and ensuring that everything was ready for the next day's work. Emberley and Doily stayed behind to help, their camaraderie as bright as the fairy lights twinkling above. You know, Doily said, leaning against a stack of bows, this might have been the most fun I've had in years. I never thought I'd say that, but I'm actually looking forward to rapping again. Me too, Emberley added, her voice filled with excitement. I can't wait to see what we'll rap next. Lenny chuckled, placing a roll of ribbon neatly back on the shelf. Well, you're always welcome back here, he said, and remember, rapping isn't about the paper and the ribbons, it's about the love and the care you put into every fold. That's what makes it magical. And that, my friends, is what makes the North Pole so special. It's not the glitter or the gifts, it's the love, the care, and the way we lift each other up when things go wrong. And of course, I can't finish today if I didn't tell you what Bixby and Biscotti were up to during all of this. You see, those two North Pole cats are never far from the action, especially when glitter and ribbon are involved. While the elves were busy fixing the chaos, Bixby, the curly-tailed rascal, decided that the rolls of unspooled paper looked like the perfect playground. He leapt onto one of the tables, batting at a sheet of silver paper until it fluttered to the floor. Biscotti, the older and wiser of the two, watched from her perch on a nearby shelf, her tail flicking with quiet disapproval. Biscotti meowed softly, her eyes narrowing, but Bixby paid no attention. His little paws already tangled in a pile of ribbon. When Lenny spotted him, he couldn't help but laugh. Looks like we've got another rapping wizard in training, Lenny said, gently scooping Bixby out of the mess. Biscotti finally decided to intervene, hopping gracefully from her shelf and swatting at the ribbon until it loosened. With a flick of her paw, she freed Bixby, giving him a look that clearly said, "You're welcome." Oh, those two. They may be mischievous, but they always find a way to bring a little extra magic to the North Pole. And that, children, is how Lenny, Emberley, Doily, and yes, even Bixby and Biscotti turned a day of chaos into a celebration of teamwork and triumph. Tomorrow's another day, and I can't wait to see what adventures it brings. Until then, take care and remember, no challenge is too big when we face it together.